Alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dear students, hope all of you are okay. This is Dr. Ismail Abuhin, and this is Introduction to Linguistics class. And within the context of the activation of distant learning activities, I'm here to give you the first virtual class in Introduction to Linguistics. The course book is The Study of Language, 5th edition by George Yole. I'm going to start with chapter 2. The title of chapter 2 is Animals and Human Language. Animals and Human Language. Topics which are going to be covered within this chapter. Topics which we are going to focus on today include, after introduction, definition of language, functions of language, properties of a human language, talking about animals and chimpanzees and language. But before going straight into the topic, I'd like to talk a little bit about language in general. Here we go. Actually, we have some characteristics and features of language. Language today is an inseparable part of a human society. A human civilization has been possible only through language. It is through language only that humanity has come out of the Stone Age and has developed science, art, and technology in a big way. Language is a means of communication. It is arbitrary. It is a system of systems. We know that speech is a primary while writing is secondary. Language is a human, so it differs from animal communication. And that's why we are going to focus actually on human language and animal communication here. So language is a human, so it differs from animal communication in several ways. Language can have scores of characteristics, but the following are the most important ones. Language is arbitrary, productive, creative, systematic, vocalic, social, non-instinctive, and controversial. These characteristics of language set a human language apart from animal communication. Some of these features may be part of animal communication, yet they don't form part of it in total. So this is just an overall view of some of the characteristics of the features of language and the features of language. We are going to go deeper actually when we come across one by one, inshallah. Let's have a look here. Here we have chapter 2, Animals and Human Language. Animals and Human Language. This is the outline. These are the topics we are going to cover. Language, functions of language, communication, properties of a human language, like what? Like displacement, arbitrariness, arbitrary nature of language, productivity, culture transmission, duality or double articulation, talking to animals, chimpanzees and language. We have examples of the chimpanzees and how they were taught to speak a language, like Woshu, Sarah, Lana, the controversy between language, human language and animal communication, Kanzi and using language. We are going to come across all these subtitles. Let's go, to see one by one. First of all, what is language? What is language? Actually, we have different definitions for language. There are several possible definitions of language, such as the first and the most important is Chomsky's definition. It is not actually the most important, but it is one of the most important. Naomi Chomsky, 1957, says that a language is a set of sentences, each finite in length and constructed out of a finite set of elements. Let's illustrate this. A language is a set, it's a group of sentences. Each means each sentence, finite in length. Finite means limited. So a language is a group of sentences. Each sentence is limited in length and constructed. Each sentence is constructed out of a finite. It means out of a limited set of elements. So here, everything is finite, everything is limited. Everything is limited. Again, language is a set, is a group of sentences. Each sentence is limited in length and is constructed out of a limited set of elements. This is the first definition. We have actually many definitions. Let's go to the second one. Language is a means by which results of a human thought and action are passed on. Language is the means by which results of a human thought, all the achievements, it means all the achievements of humanity, all the achievements of humanity are passed on. Through language, all the achievements of humanity are passed on from one generation into another. This is another definition of language. 2, language is a system of rules by which items are stored in the mind and manipulated so as to form infinite sets of combinations. Again, language is a system of rules. Of course, it's a system of rules. We have the grammar rules, the phonological rules, syntactic rules, morphological rules. These are the different levels of language. So language is a system of rules. That's why it is called a system of systems. Language is a system of rules by which items are stored in the mind and manipulated so as to form infinite sets of combinations, which are sentences. To form infinite sets, infinite groups of combinations combinations of words, of sentences, and this stuff. 3, language is a learned behavior. This is easy. Language is a cultural product. 5, language is a primarily human and non-instinctive method of communicating ideas. Okay, so the last one, language is a cultural product. This is easy. Language is a cultural product. 5, language is a primarily human and non-instinctive method of communicating ideas. So it is a human and it is non-instinctive. When I say non-instinctive, it means we are not born with. It means it is not inborn. It is not inborn. We are not born with a language. We are not born with a language. And that's why language is a primarily human and non-instinctive method of communicating ideas. The most important thing is that we use language to communicate ideas. To communicate ideas. Okay? Next, language is an arbitrary system. Language is an arbitrary system of vocal symbols used to communicate ideas and express feelings among the members of a certain social community. This is the most important. This is the most important definition of a language. Language is an arbitrary system of vocal symbols. We are going to go, through every word. I'm going to talk about every word, inshallah, after I'm done with the definition. Language is an arbitrary system of vocal symbols. Yes, of course, vocal, صوتي, of vocal symbols. Symbols means words here. Vocal symbols. Okay, vocal symbols. Symbols means words, utterances. Okay, vocals, صوتي. Okay, sound, speech. So it is arbitrary system. Arbitrary system. Why it is arbitrary? Why it is arbitrary? It is a system. It is arbitrary because we don't have any relation, for example, between the word and what it represents in the real life. For example, there is no relationship between the word elephant, okay, or the sound, this sound, elephant, or the word when we write it down, and the animal it symbolizes or it represents in the real life. There is no connection. There is no connection between the word and the thing or the object it represents in the real life. And that's why it is arbitrary. And this is called arbitrary nature of language. Arbitrary nature of language. Language is an arbitrary system of vocal symbols used to communicate ideas. This is one of the most important functions of language. To communicate ideas. توصيل الأفكار. To talk about things, okay? And express feelings among the members of a certain social community. Among the members of a certain social community. For example, the Arab community, the Palestinian community, the Israeli community. Sorry, we don't have any Israeli community. Okay? The Egyptian community, and that's why we say a certain social community. A certain social community. Okay? Again, language is an arbitrary system of vocal symbols used to communicate ideas and express feelings among the members of a certain social community, like the Palestinian social community, the Egyptian social community, the American social community, and this stuff. The last definition may be the most relevant to our purposes here. This means that language is quantitatively and qualitatively complex. Again, language is quantitatively and qualitatively complex as compared to other systems of communication. So it is, in terms of quantity and quality, it is a complex system when it is compared to other systems of communication. Do we have any other communication systems? Yes, we have lots of other systems of communication. We have Braille, we have, body language, we have gestures, so all these are different systems of communication. But compared to these to these systems, language is the most difficult, is the most complex, is the most complex. Language is vocal. It means it is spoken. Originally, language is vocal. And that's why the spoken language emerged first. Then after came the representation of the vocal symbol, which is the written one. And that's why language is vocal. That's to say, it is composed basically of spoken elements. After that came writing. Language is arbitrary, given meanings. Again, language is arbitrarily given meanings or reference. Reference means the objects in real life, the things in the real life. Okay? And that's why the meaning is not connected in language, in a human language. The meaning is not connected to the thing represented in the real life. There is no connection. There is no connection between a word, between the word and what it symbolizes, and the reference. What it symbolizes is the referent or the object in the real life. And that's why it is arbitrary. Language is used basically for purposes of communication. The main purpose of language is communication. This is important. Language is individual in the sense that it expresses one's thoughts and feelings. Yes. So it expresses, or it is used to express one's feelings and thoughts, and that's why it is individual. So individuals use it. Individuals use language to talk about their thoughts, their feelings, and that's why it is individual. Language is social. Language is social. Why? Because when we talk to each other, we have a listener, we have a speaker, and that's why language means that we have a listener and a speaker, and that's why we can say here that language is social. Language is social since its use demands, its use requires, its use needs, in most cases, a speaker and a listener or listeners, and that's why it is social. However, here are other systems of communication, both human and non-human, which are quite definitely natural rather than artificial, but which cannot be called languages in the strict sense of the term. Consider, for example, sign language, flags, road signs, smoke signals, etc. All these are different means of communication, but we cannot call these languages. Body language, facial expressions, gestures, Braille, it's the language used by the blind. Braille, it is the language used by the blind. Gestures, facial expressions, all these are different means of communication. We cannot, unfortunately, call them languages, etc. Accordingly, a language is not the only means of communication used by human beings. Okay? So we have different methods of communication. We have different, means of communication. Next. Now we have come to the functions of language. We have come to the functions of language. Number one, so this is the question of what do we use language for? What do we use language for? Number one, the first function is personal. It means to talk about your needs, your emotions, your thoughts, your desires. That's why it is personal. To express one's emotions, needs, thoughts, desires, attitudes, etc. Two, interpersonal. Inter means between. So between people. Between people. Interpersonal. Interpersonal. It means to maintain good social relationships or relations with individuals and groups. And that's why it is interpersonal. It means between people. That's why to maintain good social relations with individuals and groups. Three, directive. Directive, language is used to direct, to control the behavior of other people, like requests, warning, persuasion, advice, and this stuff. So we have another function of language, which is directive, to control the behaviors of others through advice, warnings, requests, persuasion, discussion. All these are listed under this function of language, directive function of language. It means to direct the behavior of people, to control the behavior of people. Four, referential. It means language has objects in the real life. Everything has a reference. Referential, to talk about objects or events in the immediate environment or in the culture. Again, referential, it means it has references in the real life. It has objects. It has reference. Okay, so when we say, for example, a tree, when we say a bird, this is a word. This is a word. Okay, but in the real life, in reality, we have that warm-blooded, bird or creature with two wings and two legs. Okay, two wings and two legs. It can fly. It has a feather. So this is the meaning of referential. It means to talk about objects or events in real life or in the immediate environment or in the culture. Metalinguistic. Metalinguistic means meta means beyond. Meta means beyond language. It means to talk about language itself. When we say metalinguistic, it means to talk about language itself. So we can use language to talk about language. We can use language to talk about language. For example, if I say, I wish he wouldn't use so many technical terms. This sentence, I'm using language to talk about language. Here, I wish he wouldn't use so many technical terms. So this is reflexivity or reflexiveness. Reflexivity or reflexiveness. So this is metalinguistic. This is the meaning of metalinguistic. It means to talk about language itself. To talk about language itself. For example, what is homophone? What is a phoneme? What is a morpheme? What is syntax? What is semantics? All these things, okay, are used to talk about language. Homophone is, homophone is a word used in linguistics. Homophones, when two words have the same sound. When two words have the same sound, okay? Like no and no. No is the opposite of yes, and I know you are. So the same pronunciation. This is homophone. This is a linguistic word. This is linguistic, okay? So when we say metalinguistic, it means we talk about language itself. What is homophone? What is a morpheme? Humans are clearly able to reflect on language. Reflect on language means to talk about language, okay? They clearly can reflect on language and its uses. Here is the example I have just put forward. I wish he wouldn't use so many technical terms. This reflexivity, this is reflexivity. The property of reflexivity or reflexiveness accounts for تعلل, the fact that we can use language to think and talk about language itself. So this is the most important. So we can use language to think and talk about language itself. making it one of the most distinguishing features of a human language. That's to say, we cannot, or in animal communication, animals cannot use language to talk about language. Animals cannot use language to talk about language. This is a distinguishing feature of human language, rather than of animal communication, and not of animal communication. Metalinguistic. Okay? 6, imaginative. We use language creatively in composing poetry, prose, short stories, and this stuff. Imaginative. Okay? 8, animals and human language. Animals and human language. Can animals learn to communicate with humans using language? Can animals learn to communicate with humans using a language? Does the human language have properties that make it impossible for animals to learn it? Again, does the human language have properties that make it impossible for animals to learn it? Let's see. Communication. In communication, we have communicative signals and informative signals. Communicative signals are intentional. However, informative signals are unintentional. Again, communicative signals that you use or send intentionally in order to communicate with others. Again, communicative, they are intentional. So you use these signals intentionally in order to communicate with others. They are intentional and carry meaning. However, informative signals, these are signals that you send unintentionally. They are not intentional, but still carry meaning. Both carry meaning. For example, I say to you that I am here to teach the class. So this is intentional. Students understand that I'm the professor. Why? Because I told them in my speech, I say to you that I'm here to teach the class. So I'm here to teach you. So this is intentional. I told them that I am the teacher, I am the professor. This is intentional. And that's why it is communicative signals. It is sent intentionally to communicate something. Okay, but if I'm sitting at the desk in the front of the room, this is just information. He must be the professor. Students understand that I'm the professor. In the first example, I say to you that I'm here to teach you. I say to you that I am the professor. I'm going to teach you English language competence, English language performance. Okay? So I am the professor. But if I get into the classroom and I sit in the front of the table, okay? This is informative. This is information. So I didn't tell the students that I'm the professor. So this is informative signals. This is unintentional. So I must be the professor. So this is the difference between communicative signals and informative signals. Communicative versus informative signals. More examples. Animals can be informative. Yes. Animals can be communicative. Yes. Let's have a look. Animals can be informative. Informative, it means unintentional. A bird may suddenly fly away at the approach of a predator. This is informative. We deduce that the bird must be frightened. Again, animals can be informative. If a bird is informative, this means this is just unintentional. It is unintentional. Okay? But if it is communicative, it is intentional. Again, a bird may suddenly fly away at the approach of a predator. Okay? Fly away because a predator is in the nearby. So this is unintentional. This is informative. We understand. We deduce. Okay? We sum up that we come up with the fact that the bird must be frightened. But animals can be communicative. This is intentional. A bird may make a loud squawk at the sight of a predator. Okay, this is intentional. The bird makes it intentionally. This is communication. What does he say? Hey, everybody, look out, something is going to eat you. Okay, so this is intentional. An animal can be communicative. It means the animal sends an intentional signals, okay? Intentional signals, communicative signals, telling the other animals, telling the other birds, telling the other, okay, ducks that, hey, everybody, hey, everyone, look out, something is going to eat us. So one is intentional, one is unintentional. One is informative and one is communicative. Okay, let's go to the properties of language. To the properties of language. Okay, dear students, as for the properties of human language, we have reflexivity, displacement, arbitrariness or the arbitrary nature of language, productivity, cultural transmission, and duality, all double articulation. These are some of the most important properties of a human language. Okay, let's go one by one. Let's move one by one, okay? Properties of a human language. Communication is the primary function of a human language, but not a distinguishing feature. Communication is the primary function. So what is the main function of a language? It is to communicate ideas, communication with others. But is it the distinguishing or a distinguishing feature for a human language? No, because animals communicate. Why this property is not a distinguishing feature? Because animals communicate. So animals have a communication system. Okay, all creatures communicate in some way. All creatures communicate in some way. However, they do not think about the way they communicate or talk about how they talk. So this is the rest. This is the rest of communicative signals and reflexivity and reflexivity. Okay. Sorry. Okay. Yes. Okay. Okay. So all creatures communicate in some way. However, they do not think about the way they communicate or talk about how they talk. Reflexivity, a human language has the property of reflexivity, meaning we can use language to think and talk about language itself. We have said it before. We have just said it before. Okay? We have just said it before. So in reflexivity, a human language, we can use a human language, we can use our language to talk about our language or to reflect on our language. This is the property of reflexivity. Okay? Humans are able to reflect. They are able to talk about or reflect on language itself. Without this ability, we couldn't even talk about the other properties of language. So, in short, reflexivity means we can reflect on our language. We can use our language in order to talk about language itself. So how is it possible? Is it possible, for example, is it possible to talk about the other properties of language unless we have reflexivity? No. The answer is no. So I wish he wouldn't use so many technical terms. This example, clearly shows that we can talk about language, okay? Especially here, so many technical terms, okay? So this is reflexivity. This is reflexivity. Good. Let's have a look on animal communication. Dogs are able to bark at each other. But do you think can they, for example, talk about barking? No. Dogs are able to bark at each other but they are probably not barking about barking itself. So reflexivity is not there in animal communication, is not there in animal communication. For example, one barking dog is probably not offering advice to another barking dog along the lines of, hey, you should lower your bark to make it sound more threatening. Of course, no. So the idea here is that animals can communicate with each other, but they don't have this property of language, which is reflexivity. Dogs are able to bark at each other, but they are probably not barking about barking itself. So this property is just in human language, Another example, similarly, the cat doesn't meow about its meow. So, animals cannot, reflect on their, communication. The second property is displacement. It is displacement, which means that humans can talk about things that happened in the past or will happen in the future. Displacement means that we can talk about things that are not in the immediate environment. We can talk about things that will happen in the future. We can talk about things that happened in the past. We can even talk about things that are happening right now in the immediate environment. So this is displacement. But animals don't have this property. Okay? Animals just communicate about things in the immediate environment. Animals communicate about things just in the immediate environment. For example, this is in human language. Yesterday I saw a movie. Today I am staying home. Next week I am blah blah blah. Sorry. Animal communication seems to be restricted to this moment, here and now. So animals just talk about or just convey messages about what? About the immediate environment only. They cannot, talk about the future. They cannot express things in the past, just in the immediate environment. Meow, meow, it means I am hungry now, not next week. Bark, bark, okay? If a dog is barking, okay, it means an intruder is at the door, not yesterday, not in the future, no, now. It means now. If a dog is barking, it means something dangerous, an intruder is threatening, an intruder is, hacking around, okay, right now, not yesterday. This property allows language users to talk about things and events that are not present in the immediate environment. This is a property in the human language, okay? This allows language users, human beings, people, to talk about things and events that are not present in the immediate environment. They talk about things in the future, in the past, and this stuff. Animals communication is generally considered to lack this property. Of course, they don't have this. Okay? Arbitrariness, or the arbitrary nature of language. This is easy. This means that there is no natural connection between a linguistic form and its meaning.